Let's tackle this easy one-day project for a tree branch stocking display. As our family grows, we've started to run out of room at our home to hang Christmas stockings. So why not build something up vertically to hold more stockings in a smaller amount of space? And we can accomplish that by recycling a trimmed tree branch. This one is about 7 feet long and about 3 inches wide at the bottom. I'm also using some leftover 2x8 wood for the base of this project, although stacking up a couple layers of plywood would have worked too. This small chunk of aspen will be big enough for a star cutout at the top of the tree, and I'll use some 3/8-inch wood dowels to use as hangers for the stockings.
I want a word with you in Santa's workshop, little boy.
Well, my woodshop is smaller than Santa's, but probably more fun than Homer's. Because my branch has a curve to it, I'm going to center the length on a straight line that I'll make with tape. My goal is to keep the base and the top of the branch centered across that tape so that the weight and the center of gravity will align with the middle of the base. That way the branch should stand up straight on the base and not lean in any specific direction. With the branch centered against a 90-degree straight line, I can cut off the jagged end flush with the end of my work table. And to hold the branch securely onto the base, I'll use this 3/8-inch, 6-inch long lag bolt. The top of the branch needs trimming too, and my total length will be 6 feet 6 inches or 198 centimeters. Your total tree height can vary based on your needs. Back to the bottom of the branch, it's a good time to drill a pilot hole in for that lag bolt. I'll center a long drill bit and keep it level for a straight bore hole. This method of using the torpedo level looks pretty weird, but it works. Next, I'll need to remove all the bark from the branch, and this can be accomplished a couple different ways. It's easiest when using a draw knife while the branch is clamped down to the work table, but there are other ways to remove the bark as well. A small hatchet or camp axe works too, as does a heavy field knife or a machete. I did my best to remove most of the bark, but we'll finish the cleanup with sanding tools. Of course, all cutting and bark removal leaves a disaster behind.
All our holidays were always such a mess.
Oh, yeah.
So, with a little rough sanding to remove the rest of the bark, I'll add that dusty mess on my floor. I guess I'll have to do some cleanup here soon. To make the base, I'll cut around the knots on these 2x8s, and I'll get 2 decent pieces at 17 inches long. Again, I think if I had scrap 3/4-inch plywood handy, I would have doubled up the layers, and that would have worked well too. For these 2x8s, I'll also take a thin rip cut to give me a clean edge for glue up. They match together pretty well. I didn't have to, but I chose to add some biscuits to the two halves to help join them together, though the Titebond 3 glue would have been enough for a good bond. The 2 pieces were lined up and clamped together for at least a 4-hour wait. While the glue dries, I went to the computer to print off a 5-point star graphic, and with some spray glue bonded the paper star to the small piece of white aspen I had pulled from my scrap bin. A cheap piece of pine would have worked pretty well here too. Over to the bandsaw, I fought the urge to rush, which always leaves me with a sloppy cut. And though the video was sped up quite a bit, I took my time to make sure the edges were clean and straight. That just means less sanding in the long run. I think I mention in almost every video how much I hate sanding, but the star actually looks pretty good. For my tree, I'm looking for places to hang up to 16 individual stockings, so I'll need 8 long dowels to drive through the branch to give me a hanging point on both ends of each dowel. Cutting those dowels down to 10 inches, I should have at least 4 inches per side to hang each stocking. I should really do some cleanup soon. Now in the afternoon, it was safe to unclamp the base lumber and get it ready for centering on that 6-inch lag bolt. I'll start with drilling a recessed hole in the bottom of the base to help hide the bolt head and allow the base to sit flat on the floor. Following the recessed hole, another 3/8-inch hole was drilled to let the lag bolt push through. On the other end, it was time to drill in a small dowel hole for the star and the top of the branch. Keeping that drill bit aimed down the straight line of the blue tape, that allowed the star to be relatively centered on the top of the branch. It's all still very rustic looking, but that was the intent of this project. The layout of the dowel holes is absolutely tied to the length of the stockings being hung. My wife's custom needlepoint stockings are 19 inches long from the end of the hanging loop to the angled drop of the toe. My hole pattern on the branch will allow for that 19-inch gap between each set of dowels. In total, I could get 4 dowel positions on the branch from top to bottom, holding up to 16 stockings. My holes were drilled freehand at each measured position, one from the top straight down, and the other a half-inch lower drilled in side to side. I repeated this drill pattern 4 times to make a cross pattern of dowel holes. Before final assembly, the base was finished with a round-over router bit on the top edge, and the whole block was sanded smooth. The combination of the weight from the lumber along with the width of the base should be stable enough to stand and hold the weight of 16 filled stockings. If I did my measurements correctly, the weight of the branch and the stocking should still fall pretty close to dead center on the base, making gravity work in my favor by pulling the weight straight down the middle. Things are coming together pretty well. I'll definitely have this tree done in time for Santa's arrival.
Okay, people, tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., Santa's coming to town.
Santa! Oh my God!
With all the pieces fabricated, let's move on to some final assembly and some background music too. This turned out to be a really cool and enjoyable one-day build. I hope you give it a try. Take care.